Have you ever noticed how being seen can change a person? Not just in passing, not just acknowledged politely, but recognized. Because there's a difference between being looked at and being seen in a way that says, I understand what's here. Today, I want to talk about the relationship between identity and visibility and how the way the world sees you or fails to see you quietly shapes who you become. And to explore this, I want to use the film Queen of Katwe, not as inspiration, not as motivation, but as a psychological and emotional case study. Because it shows us something that we rarely talk about clearly: what happens when identity shows up or exists clearly long before visibility arrives. If you haven't seen the movie, I will give you some context. This is a true story about a young girl named Phiona Mutesi. She is growing up in the slums of Katwe, Uganda. Her life is shaped by survival. She misses school. She also sells corn. Her days are structured around necessity, not possibility. No one is telling her she's gifted. No one is predicting a future for her. No one is naming her intelligence. And yet, something is already there. Before chess ever enters her life, something else is shaping her identity, and it's subtle. She's not being actively told she doesn't matter. No one is standing over her saying you'll never become anything. It's quieter than that. She's surrounded by urgency. She's surrounded by noise. She's surrounded by survival. And when life is about getting through the day, there isn't much room for reflection. There isn't much room for you to think about who am I? Rather, you're thinking, what do I eat today? This is important because identity doesn't just form through words. It forms through attention or the absence of it. When no one is really looking at you, not with curiosity, not with expectation, not with belief, your nervous system learns something very specific. It learns, don't take up space. Don't expect too much. Don't imagine beyond what is necessary. Not because you're incapable, but because anticipation without safety feels dangerous. So invisibility doesn't just hide potential, it trains restraint. Fiona learns who she is by watching what the world asks of her. The world asks her to survive, to sell corn. It doesn't ask her to imagine. And when the world doesn't imagine you, eventually you stop imagining yourself. This is how identity becomes adaptive instead of expressive. You don't think, what could I be? Instead, you think, what is required of me now? And so that mindset settles into the body. Your posture stays small, your voice remains quiet, and your attention remains outward, scanning for need, not possibility. This isn't failure, this is intelligence responding to the environment. And this is important because many adults don't lack ambition or confidence, they lack mirroring. And so they need someone who looked at them long enough to say, there's something there. Fiona doesn't see herself as someone not because there's nothing there, but because it hasn't been reflected back to her. Her identity is present, but unnamed. It is quiet, but unconfirmed. And then chess enters her life almost quietly. At first, it isn't opportunity. It isn't destiny. It is just space. It's time. It's a board. It's a room. And so for the first time, she isn't being watched for who she is. She's being watched for how she thinks. The coach doesn't immediately see a prodigy. He sees something more subtle. She doesn't rush her moves. She remembers patterns. She learns from her losses instead of shrinking. And she stays calm when she's challenged. Her intelligence isn't loud. It doesn't ask to be noticed, but it is consistent. And consistency is what actually changes the quality of attention. This is how visibility actually begins. Not with applause, but with someone actually lingering a little bit longer than expected. Someone starts watching more closely. Someone adjusts how they speak to you. Someone start asking a little bit more closely, not out of pressure, but out of recognition. And when this happens, something shifts internally. Because now Phiona isn't just playing chess. She's being observed while playing. And being observed changes you. You sit differently, you concentrate longer, and you try again instead of walking away. Not because you're suddenly confident, but because attention creates a sense of responsibility. And this is where people misunderstand visibility. They think being seen makes you bold. Most of the time, it makes you careful. Careful not to fail. It makes you careful not to disappoint. It makes you careful not to lose the gaze that just arrived. And now attention changes again. It becomes expectation. Expectation feels different in the body because now it's no longer someone is noticing me. It becomes someone is counting on me. When you've grown up invisible, your identity is organized around not disappointing anyone because no one is expecting anything from you. However, when expectation arrives, there's a certain type of split that happens. One part of you is being shaped by the old rule. It says, stay calm, don't do too much, don't risk too much, just move quietly. The other part of you is being invited forward. It's not aggressive, it's just steady. These two parts don't integrate overnight. This is why visibility often feels destabilizing instead of empowering, because it asks you to expand faster than your nervous system is ready for. And so Phiona doesn't just learn how to play chess at a higher level. She has to learn how to carry herself differently. She has to tolerate being watched closely. She has to tolerate outcomes being attributed to her. And she has to tolerate success feeling public. And with all of that comes fear. Not just the fear of failure, but the fear of what has just been gained. What if this was a fluke? What if I can't repeat it? What if the version of me that they see disappears? Visibility exposes identity gaps between who you've been allowed to be and who you're now invited to become. And this is where many people retreat, not because they are lazy or they lack discipline, but because the internal structure has now caught up to the external gaze. And then something important happens. She keeps returning. She returns to the board, she returns to the process, she returns after disappointment. And this is where identity stabilizes. Not in the applause, not in the peak, but in the middle. In repetition, in staying present even when belief isn't carried by praise, but by experience. Over time, she carries herself differently. Not louder, not bigger, but steadier. She trusts her thinking. She allows herself to imagine forward. She holds visibility without collapsing under it. She doesn't become someone new. She becomes more herself. The visibility no longer defines her. It stopped destabilizing her because now her sense of self is no longer borrowed from the gaze of others. It comes from within her. And this is why this story matters far beyond chess. So many people think once I'm recognized, I'll feel solid. Once I'm acknowledged, I'll know who I am. But actually, this is the other way around. When identity is rooted, visibility becomes something you can carry. When it isn't, visibility feels like pressure you're always afraid to lose. So if you're in a season where you're being seen more than before, where expectations are rising, where something is being asked of you that once wasn't, and it feels uncomfortable, that doesn't mean you're failing. It means that you're integrating. And that takes time. Because sometimes the real work is not about becoming visible. It's about becoming steady enough to remain visible without losing yourself. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Also hit the notification bell so you can be notified when I post the next video. Sur ce, on se dit à la prochaine. On se dit